The icy rock peaks of Mount Kenya pluck at clouds high in the atmosphere. Plants and animals living here face a daily battle with the elements. On the Great Plains below, the age-old struggle that determines survival of the fittest unfolds. All are part of a unique and fragile ecosystem that depends on Mount Kenya for survival. Right at its heart, a piece of Africa reaches high into the sky. Straddling the equator, Mount Kenya soars over 5 kilometers into the air. Its peaks sit so high in the atmosphere that glaciers cling to the rocky slopes despite the tropical sun. "3 million years ago, a series of almighty explosions of molten rock shook Africa and created one of the continent's most influential mountains. The ancient volcano's fires have long since died out, and the crater has been eroded to a handful of granite spikes. It's one of the Earth's most hostile environments. But life has found a way to survive here. Mount Kenya sits in the heart of the country with which it shares its name. Rising high above the surrounding plains, the mountain rears its head into the path of freezing winds blowing in from the east. Clouds snag on the cold peaks, releasing rain and snow on the slopes. Water is stored as ice in this giant deep freeze and fed to the thirsty land below. But this natural water tower is under threat. Over 92% of Mount Kenya's largest glacier has melted in the last century. And scientists predict the rest could disappear completely within 30 years. Losing this reservoir of ice would have far-reaching effects on the people and animals below. Stretching northwest from Mount Kenya's foothills to the edge of the Great Rift Valley is the Laikipia Plateau. Home to more mammals than anywhere else in East Africa. Stories of life and death have unfolded on these plains for millions of years. Acres of grassland provide a giant dining table for herds of herbivores. And where hooves tread, claws always follow. A zebra stallion does his best to defend his panicking harem. If his hooves make contact, his kick could easily kill an adult lion. But a zebra is a meal worth the risk. Lionesses often hunt as a team. While some give chase, others stay hidden. an ambushed prey that is driven towards them. Lions are much less cooperative when the kill has been made. Feeding is a free-for-all. A hungry lion can eat a quarter of its own body weight in one sitting. Although cubs will eat meat if they can get it, they seldom get a look in at a carcass. Fortunately, these are still young enough to fill up on their mother's milk. The scent of carrion carries on the wind and attracts scavengers from miles around. When jackals and vultures have picked all they can from a carcass, hyenas will find something worth eating. The hyena's huge skull and powerful jaw muscles are designed to crush bones. Their strong stomach acid will dissolve them in a matter of hours. They make a good meal of what other scavengers leave behind. The ability to eat solid bone gives hyena mothers an advantage. With so much calcium in their diet, they produce some of the richest milk of all mammals. Back at the den, two hungry mouths eagerly await their mother's return. Hyena pups can be left alone for days while their mother roams the plains, hunting and scavenging. But when she finally comes home, they are treated to a nutritious meal that is well worth the wait. Although they are born with a full set of teeth, most hyena pups aren't weaned until they are over a year old. Females are dominant in hyena society, but there's no sisterhood. High-ranking females threaten a subordinate in full view of the clan's pups. It's a good way for young to learn who stands where in the group's hierarchy. Seeing how their own mother behaves in the group quickly teaches pups what social advantages they may or may not have inherited. Mount Kenya stands sentinel on the horizon. Wildlife living in its shadow is dependent on the supply of water fed down to the plains from the icy peaks. The struggle for survival on the plains is nothing compared to that on the mountain's high slopes. As the mountain climbs skyward, its head and shoulders venture into a different world. Above 4,400 meters in the Nival Zone, there is nothing but snow and rock. The air is thin and cold. Weather at these heights is raw and damaging. Moisture freezes and thaws, expanding and contracting in cracks in the rock, slowly breaking it up. But in the Afro-Alpine zone, just below the barren peaks, life has managed to take hold. Temperatures can vary from 30 degrees Celsius when the sun is overhead, to more than 10 degrees below freezing when it dips below the horizon. Up here, it's winter every night and summer every day. Animals and plants here are isolated from the world below, marooned in an ocean of cloud. To survive in this hostile habitat, they must adapt or yield to the mountain. An auger buzzard takes advantage of the mountain's wind patterns. Thermals pushing up the steep slopes lift it high into the sky. These buzzards can survive at higher altitudes than any other bird of prey in Africa. A compact body and large wings are the ideal design for soaring through the mountain's thin air. Auger buzzards can glide effortlessly for hours. Long and flexible primary feathers at the wingtip stretch and rotate for precision maneuverability. Laser-sharp eyesight scours the ground for prey, and there is one animal in particular it's looking for: rock hyrax. The rock hyrax on Mount Kenya have much thicker coats than their cousins that live at lower altitudes. Dense fur goes some way to help keep them warm in the wintry climate. Baby hyrax find getting their feet off the ground is a good way to keep the cold out. Young hyrax get to grips with the slippery rocks very quickly and are able to jump half a meter when they are just 2 days old. Their rubbery feet secrete sticky sweat that gives them extra traction. And the thick pads act like suction cups to help them cling to steep rocks. While the family are out in the open, the alpha male keeps a sharp eye out for danger. But the auger buzzard's snowy undercarriage is well camouflaged against the misty skies overhead. She's not easy to spot from below. As soon as the alpha male hyrax sounds the alarm, the family bolt for safety. This time, the buzzard's gone hungry, but she'll be back. This female will be ready to lay a clutch of eggs in a couple of months, so she'll have hungry mouths to feed. She may lay up to 3 eggs, but usually only the strongest chick will live. The fight for survival begins in the nest. The buzzard's hunting grounds are a strange world. Up here, even plants have had to evolve bizarre ways to survive. These peculiar groundsels have taken the word hardy to extremes. Giant tree groundsels can grow to be 10 meters high and live for 200 years. Dead leaves are held on the plant and allowed to bunch around the trunk. It's the vegetable answer to wearing a scarf. Cabbage groundsels hunker close to the ground and draw their downy leaves around them, as though tucking themselves into bed with a blanket. When the sun drops behind the mountain peaks each evening, the temperature plummets. When a new day breaks, the groundsels gently unfurl their leaves and turn to face the sun to absorb as much of its warmth and energy as possible. The constant freeze and thaw drip feeds streams that go on to power rivers on the plains below. It's the vital source of water for everything living at the mountain's feet. A malachite sunbird seems far too delicate a creature to survive in this harsh climate. But it has a unique relationship with a curious plant that holds the key to its success. Sunbirds need a lot of fuel to fire their tiny engines at this altitude. Hidden among a giant lobelia's whiskers are tiny flowers packed with the richest nectar in the world. The woolly stem provides more than just a meal for a sunbird pair. They use the fluffy leaf hairs to line their nests. Each evening, the little birds enter a state of torpor, a miniature hibernation every night. Tribal elders have been known to make pilgrimages up to Mount Kenya's freezing peaks. In their eyes, the journey brought them closer to God. But humans are mere visitors here. No man can survive at this altitude permanently. The Kikuyu people, who historically live around the base of the mountain, call Mount Kenya Kirinyaga, the mountain of brightness. Its white peaks have fascinated them since the birth of their tribe. Seen from below, where snow and ice are unheard of, the glinting white ice caps seem nothing short of divine. Kikuyu myth tells of a supreme creator called Ngai. Many Kikuyu people have left their traditional way of life behind, but beliefs and customs are kept alive by a few groups clinging to their tribal history. Snow-white patterns drawn on the skin for rituals symbolize the rivers and lands of Ngai's kingdom. Ngai conjured Mount Kenya from the elements as a resting place, and he lives on its bright peaks. But the world is changing. The white ice on the peaks is not as striking as it once was. Many Kikuyu see the vanishing glacier as a sign that their god is deserting them. The shining crown of ice that has been the focus of their spiritual beliefs for centuries could disappear in as little as 30 years. The impact on Kikuyu spirituality would be devastating. But the impact on their physical lives and those of the animals who also depend on the glacier's water would be even more dramatic. The Laikipia Plateau is dry for 7 months of the year in 2 distinct seasons. When the rain stays away, runoff from Mount Kenya's glacier-fed rivers is the plain's only source of water. But plants and animals here have evolved ways of surviving through dry seasons. A whistling thorn acacia tree's tiny leaves help it to survive the dry season, as very little water can evaporate from the small leaf surfaces. But drought isn't the tree's only problem. Acacias are a giraffe's favorite food. Their great height gives giraffe access to leaves far out of reach of other mammals, and adults eat over 30 kilos every day. The tree puts up a fight against this onslaught. Wicked spines stud every branch, making any meal a very prickly affair. But giraffe are made of tough stuff. Their flexible lips are armor-plated, and a prehensile tongue can strip leaves from the thorniest of twigs. They even have syrupy saliva that coats any thorns inadvertently swallowed, protecting the giraffe's long throat. But the acacias. But drought isn't the tree's only problem. Acacias are a giraffe's favorite food. Their great height gives giraffe access to leaves far out of reach of other mammals, and adults eat over 30 kilos every day. The tree puts up a fight against this onslaught. Wicked spines stud every branch, making any meal a very prickly affair. But giraffe are made of tough stuff. Their flexible lips are armor-plated, and a prehensile tongue can strip leaves from the thorniest of twigs. They even have syrupy saliva that coats any thorns inadvertently swallowed, protecting the giraffe's long throat. But the acacias have one more weapon in their arsenal. Colonies of ants make their home in the bulbous bases of the thorns. They enjoy a safe place to live among the spikes, out of reach of predatory birds. In return, the ants help the tree fight its herbivorous enemies by biting and squirting acid. But the adult males in this herd have more than food on their minds. A bull giraffe has found a female on heat. He lets her know his intentions by gently nudging her and following her everywhere she goes. This female is not so easily wooed. A serious suitor knows better than to give up too quickly. And he stays close. An amorous male needs eyes in the back of his head. He's not the only one with romantic ideas. A younger male joins in the pursuit. It's a bold move. The two males square up to each other, assessing one another's strength. Each tries to stand taller than the other. A male giraffe's skull gets bigger and more knobbly as it gets older, until it's like a great club on the end of its neck. The giraffe swings this weapon backwards, so the horns hit his opponent like a hammer. The full force of the blow is concentrated in one spot. A well-aimed wallop can be powerful enough to knock a giraffe off its feet. This time, the challenger realizes he's met his match and retreats before too much damage can be done. The dominant male's efforts have paid off. The female finally accepts his advances. He may not be the most handsome giraffe on the plains, but his battle scars are a sure sign he's a strong individual, with a good set of genes to pass on. Southwest of the Laikipia Plateau lies an ancient mountain range, the Aberdares.